So when you hear the term homeschooling, what's the first image that, pops into your mind? For years, that image was pretty fixed. Isolated, maybe ultra-religious, definitely fringe, and primarily white.
Right. And that stereotype, frankly, it just needs to be retired. If you actually look at the research, home education it's successfully shed that label.
It's not an anomaly anymore.
Not at all. It has evolved into a fully mainstream, complex, and rapidly diversifying educational choice.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we went into the research literature, mostly US and Canadian studies, but with an eye on the global context to really understand what's driving this massive shift.
And more importantly, what the outcomes are.
Yes, our mission today is to cut through all that noise. We're going to explore how homeschooling grew from this fringe movement in the 60s to a recognized alternative today.
We'll look at why parents are choosing it and how the academic and social results actually stack up against traditional schooling.
Okay, so before we unpack the history, let's just establish a common understanding, because the term itself matters.
It does.
When we talk about homeschooling, we mean the elective practice where parents are personally overseeing their child's curriculum and instruction.
And the crucial element there, the thing that distinguishes it from, say, remote learning during the pandemic, is control.
Right.
The parent, not the state or some institution, is in charge. They are ultimately responsible for that education. They're basically running their own micro-private school at home.
Even if they have to follow some state reporting rules.
Exactly.
Okay, let's get into the history then, because this whole model is really a revival, isn't it? It's not some new invention.
Not at all. I mean, education at home was the default in North America until, the 1870s?
Yeah, that's when compulsory school attendance laws kicked in and government institutions really took over.
And if you need proof that the original model worked, you just have to look at the list of people who were homeschooled.
George Washington, Abraham Lincoln.
Both Roosevelts, Thomas Edison. I mean, this model of individualized attention has a deep pedigree of producing some very high achievers.
But the modern revival, the one that started in the 1960s, that's where it gets really interesting.
Right.
Because it was born from two completely different, almost opposing intellectual roots.
That's what's so fascinating. The first generation of this modern movement came from two different strains, opposite ends of the philosophical spectrum, really.
Okay, so what was the first one?
The first was ideological. It came from figures like Dr. Raymond Moore, often associated with the Christian right.
Right.
And this strain emphasized delaying formal education, maybe until ages 8 to 12, and really focusing on family values and moral instruction.
And the second strain came from the polar opposite direction.
Exactly, the pedagogical or libertarian left. This was championed by educational reformers like John Holt, who argued for decentralization, parental autonomy, and trusting a child's natural curiosity.
Holt's philosophy is what eventually led to unschooling, right?
Yes, the idea that you don't follow a structured curriculum at all. Students just learn based on their interests. But here's the key connection. While their reasons were totally opposed, one wanted moral cohesion, the other wanted radical freedom.
They both shared a deep dissatisfaction with the public school system.
A deep dissatisfaction with the centralized one-size-fits-all model. Exactly.
It's such an interesting partnership born out of shared opposition. But regardless of where it came from, the growth rate has just been explosive.
Oh, absolutely. In Canada, for example, the number of registered homeschooled kids increased by a staggering 776% in just 18 years.
Wow.
And that was between 1979 and 1996. Today, associations are estimating over 80,000 children are being educated at home across Canada.
And the U.S. numbers are even bigger in scale. Estimates for growth have been climbing, anywhere from 11 to 40% a year?
Annually. So by 2019, you were looking at somewhere between 1.7 million and maybe over 2 million students.
And that collective number really puts it in perspective.
It does. The homeschool population in the U.S. is now bigger than the total public school enrollment of 41 of the 50 states.
So it's its own major educational institution, really.
By any measure, yes.
So if it's that big, what's the biggest push factor? What's causing this mass exodus from the system?
The research is, it's really clear on this. The principal stimulus is a generalized dissatisfaction with public education.
So parents aren't being pulled to something new, they're being pushed out of the old system.
That's exactly. And they rarely cite just one reason. In 1999, about half of them said they wanted a better education at home. But by 2007, that concern had shifted.
To what?
A massive 87.6% of U.S. families cited concerns about the environment of other schools.
The environment. So that's safety, peer pressure.
It's all of it. It includes safety. Studies show 1 in 4 American public school students have been victims of violence at or near their school. Events like Columbine really intensified its search for safer alternatives. But it's also pedagogical. Parents object to the curriculum, the lack of challenge, negative peer pressure, a perceived lack of discipline. It's really a systemic critique.
So let's go back to that old monolith image, the homogeneous, deeply religious, conservative group. That image is just fundamentally breaking down now.
Oh, it's shattered. Even though, practicing Christians still make up a large portion of the U.S. community, the diversification is arguably the most important development here in the last decade.
In what way?
We're seeing rapid growth across all lines. Political, economic, cultural. Look at the Muslim American community, which has been predicted to be one of the fastest growing subgroups.
And the rise among families of color just completely challenges that old narrative.
It really does. Based on 2016 U.S. data, over 400,000 Hispanic families were homeschooling. That's 26% of the total.
And Black families.
Over 132,000 Black families, which is 8% of the total. And when you look at the why for those families, it connects right back to those push factors. A significant driver is the desire to escape systemic issues, like institutional racism and the marginalization their children feel in traditional classrooms. So for many, it isn't just about pedagogy, it's about protecting their kids.
So the community is now just, it's huge. You're talking about families of gifted students, special needs students, LGBTQ students escaping bullying. It's everybody.
It's expansive. Now, in terms of socio-demographics, there are still some consistent patterns.
Like what?
Homeschooling parents tend to have above average levels of education.
Yeah. About
81% have studied beyond high school, compared to 63% nationally.
And the family unit is typically very stable.
Very. Nearly 80% are two-parent homes, and in almost 88% of them, the mother doesn't work outside the home, which, is almost necessary to make the model work.
Okay, let's pivot to how they teach. We know it can be structured or unstructured, unschooling, but technology must have been a complete game changer here.
A revolution, absolutely. Even way back in 2000, homeschooling families had much higher access to the internet than the national average.
Which let them do what?
It let them create individualized curricula. Over 70% of parents did that. It allowed for global networking, sharing resources. Technology basically removed the isolation factor.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. The blurring of lines between home and school. The old idea of a parent teaching alone at the kitchen table is it's evolving into these complex hybrid models.
Precisely. We're seeing the rise of co-ops, groups of families, sometimes hundreds of them, where parents teach specific subjects. It lets them pool their expertise, especially for higher level stuff like advanced math or science that one parent might not feel comfortable with.
And then you have more formal structures like partial day schools.
Yeah, these are often private institutions, like the Catholic-affiliated Regina Cayley model, where students go to classes maybe 1 or 2 days a week.
The structure and community.
Exactly. And they do the rest of their work at home.
And what's really critical is that the public system is starting to respond to this.
It is. We're seeing homeschool assistance programs, or HAPs, like one called ORRLA in Washington State. These are district-run programs.
And they offer, what, like a la carte services?
Basically, yeah. A la carte access to licensed teachers, to specific courses, guidance counselors, resources. It's radical customization, and it's paid for by the public system.
And don't forget, dual enrollment.
Right, in states like Iowa, where a homeschooled student can take just one public school course like AP Calculus, or they can join the football team or the theater program.
While keeping their core education at home.
All these innovations, they're leading to this rising phenomenon of microschools, small, personalized groups that blend the focus of home education with modern tech and peer interaction.
So the big takeaway is that this movement is no longer about isolation.
No, it's about building customized learning portfolios.
Okay, so we've seen the growth, we've seen the diversity, but none of it matters if the results are bad. So let's finally get to the question everyone asks. Do these methods actually produce better academic results?
The data is. It's just crystal clear. Standardized testing consistently shows superior outcomes. You have to remember the baseline, right?
Public school students score at the 50th percentile, by definition.
By definition. U.S. homeschoolers, however, average consistently between the 75th and 85th percentiles.
That is a massive achievement gap.
It's huge. And that success carries over to college readiness. If you look at ACT scores from the late 90s, homeschoolers averaged 22.7 compared to the national average of 21.
And on the SAT?
Same story. Homeschoolers averaged 1,083. The national average was 1,016.
Now, what's really fascinating here, and this is a crucial finding for you to hear, is that home education seems to blunt the negative effects of someone's background.
That's right. Low family income, low parental education, race, ethnicity. All of those factors have less influence on academic achievement in home education than they do in public schools.
Wait, hold on. Let's pause on that. You're saying the individualized attention is powerful enough to overcome the structural disadvantages that we know hold kids back in traditional schools.
That's the implication. I mean, one study showed that students taught at home by mothers who never even finished high school scored a full 55 percentile points higher than comparable public school students.
55 points.
It suggests that one-on-one attention and family support are more effective drivers of success than formal parental qualifications.
And the long-term impact holds up.
It does. Students homeschooled for 7 years scored in the 92nd percentile on the SAT. Almost 70% plan to go on to college, and they're getting into top-tier schools: Harvard, Yale, MIT, Stanford.
And those schools seem to value them for specific skills?
They do. They value them for things like self-motivation, curiosity, and independent study skills.
Okay, now let's tackle the biggest criticism head-on. The socialization question. Opponents, like the National Education Association, have always argued that homeschooling can't provide a comprehensive education experience because of the social isolation.
Right, that's the one thing everyone assumes.
Yeah.
That homeschooled kids are socially awkward.
But the research...
The research actually shows the opposite. I mean, social science largely refutes this whole isolation idea. Homeschooled children participate in an average of 5.2 social activities outside the home every week.
5 a week, so that's sports,
scouts, co-ops, part-time jobs, church groups. They are interacting constantly. It's just not with the same 30 kids of the exact same age, day in and day out.
And when researchers looked at actual behavior, what did they find?
They found public school children had significantly more problem behaviors than the homeschooled students.
Interesting.
And in key areas like self-concept, maturity, assertiveness, there were no significant differences. The adult outcomes really sealed it. Former homeschool students were not disadvantaged. They were typically employed, married, and found to be more mature, better adjusted, and interestingly, less peer dependent.
They could think for themselves.
Exactly.
Okay, this next part is a huge takeaway for you, especially if you care about efficiency. Let's talk about the money, because the cost comparison here is just startling.
It really tells you something profound about resource allocation in education. Homeschool families spend, on average, $546 per child per year.
$546, and that investment gets them, on average, to the 85th percentile.
Right. Now compare that to the institutional cost. Public schools spend an average of $5,325 per student.
And that number doesn't even include things like new buildings or debt.
Exactly. And that $5,325 produces the average 50th percentile ranking.
The disparity is just staggering.
It is. $546 for 85th percentile achievement, over $5,300 for 50th percentile achievement. And this efficiency, it translates into massive taxpayer savings. One study in Oregon estimated the annual savings at $31 million.
Wow. We also see just a huge diversity in how governments regulate all this.
Yeah, it's all over the map. There are basically 4 main ways they handle it.
So at one end you have
no regulation, like in England, Texas, and Alaska. Parents don't even need to contact the state. Now, Alaska is an outlier because it actually provides government funding to families through correspondence programs.
So it monetizes their choice.
It does. Then you have low regulation, like in Ontario, where you just have to send in a simple notification.
And after that?
Moderate regulation. Think Colorado.
Yeah.
You have to notify the state, and students have to meet some performance evaluation requirements, though the bar might be set pretty low.
And finally, you have the high regulation places.
Right. Places like Quebec or New York State, where parents have to apply, get approval, submit an education plan, and deal with mandatory annual testing and a lot of administrative burdens.
And some countries just ban it outright.
They do, like China, Brazil, or Germany.
Germany is always cited as the extreme example.
It is, because they explicitly ban it to prevent the development of what they call parallel societies. Their goal is to integrate all children via state-determined democratic values.
And there's that asylum case in the U.S., right?
A German homeschooling family was granted political asylum in the United States based on persecution for wanting to educate their children privately.
Yeah.
It really highlights the severity of that policy.
So we have this massive spectrum of government oversight. But the big policy question is, does all that heavy regulation actually lead to better outcomes?
And the research gives us a very clear answer.
Which is?
It does not. The degree of government regulation, high, moderate, or low, has no significant effect on the academic performance of homeschooled children.
No effect at all.
None. The test scores stay high, around the 86th percentile, regardless of government oversight. It seems that parents are just highly motivated consumers who don't need a lot of rules to perform well.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this. We have a movement that started as a small countercultural choice. It has absolutely exploded into a mainstream alternative, diversifying rapidly across racial and economic lines, and it's all driven by parental dissatisfaction with the existing system.
And the core finding, really, is that homeschooling is a successful, extremely inexpensive, private alternative that consistently results in superior academic and social outcomes compared to the average public school experience.
It's a powerful model for effectiveness and radical customization.
It is.
So what does this all mean for the future of education in general? It's a clear challenge to the one-size-fits-all public system.
It is, absolutely. The structural challenge raised by the growth of these hybrid models, the co-ops, the partial day schools, the public programs like ORLA, it's profound. It forces policymakers to ask a really tough question.
Which is?
Could public education successfully offer this broader spectrum of agile, customized, blended learning portfolios to all families? Is there this massive untapped market for this level of customization within the public system that could deliver better, more efficient results for every single student, not just the ones whose parents choose to opt out completely?
That's the question.
That is the question the homeschooling revolution puts squarely on the table for everyone.